Welcome to VPG's virtual water cooler chat podcast, where we share lessons and stories of women professionals to help empower other women and expand a greater circle of influence. So we walk our journey with those who understand and appreciate us. Today, we'll talk with Brendy Belony, a paralegal supervisor and training coordinator at Perkins Coie LLP in Washington, D.C. With over 20 years of experience, Brendy is a people manager who supervises, mentors, and trains patent prosecution paralegals and paralegal assistants. She is passionate about the empowerment and development of her team and spends her days training, mentoring, managing projects, and working collaboratively with individuals at all organizational levels. Brendy takes every opportunity to learn and express her creativity. She's an avid reader, loves to visit museums, History Channel fanatic, and is currently learning to play the piano as an adult. She also served as a volunteer mentor with the Fresh Air Fund, so it's safe to say sharing knowledge and ideas are her passion.
Hey, Brendy, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to VPG's virtual water cooler chat. So happy to have you, and thank God it's Friday.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad that we met at the Emerging Trends Committee at IPMA. And I've learned so much from you and other administrators that really talk about and also very passionate about the various topics that face the legal industry. So tell us about yourself and what drives Brendy.
As a basic biography, I am the Paralegal Supervisor for patent prosecution at Perkins Coie. I'm also the training coordinator there. So I manage all training programs for the paralegals, paralegal assistants, and I also coordinate with LPA leadership to have training for them as well. If you want to go back further, I started off as a receptionist. I landed in patent prosecution by mistake. I wanted to go to law school at one point, and maybe I'll still go, I'm still pretty young, but what drives me is that I want to see people grow. I love helping people see the best in themselves. Professional development, education, teaching, that's like something that's in my blood. It's something that drives me. I'm not sure where it came from, but my mother is also an educator in the healthcare industry. So it might be something genetic, who knows? My parents are Haitian immigrants, so I'm first generation. And so the drive to just help people comes from watching them struggle, right? Watching them, succeed and struggle and build this legacy that they've built. I'm literally the first person in my family to be born in these United States of America. And my parents are very successful. My siblings are very successful. My cousins, my aunts, everyone's very successful because they always helped each other. They always had each other's back. And that's something that I always admired, and it just followed me through life. Even in school, I was kind of like a tutor for a lot of my friends. And so it's always something that has driven me. It's just helping people see the best in themselves. On a personal note, what drives me is equity for the underserved. I volunteered at the Fresh Air Fund for a few years. I donate to various charities, including Donor Choose. It's where teachers go to get donations for their projects. And so every month I donate to one project because I think it's so important for teachers to have the resources that they need. When I see that, it's something that's super important to me. And little known fact, I did start a nonprofit when I was in my 20s. It didn't take off, but it was something that was important to me, just helping underserved communities. So yeah, that's basically me.
That's great. I wish that more people will be thinking about other people instead of just ourselves. Because, like every single time, for example, even when we have problems, sometimes it's like I have to remind myself whatever problems I have is so much, it's hard, don't get me wrong, but it's whatever problems that I might have is so much more insignificant than many other people that face. So gratitude is something that really helps me maintain that equilibrium in terms of, being grateful about what I have, and friends, families, clients, whoever, and colleagues, professional colleagues like you. So thank you for letting me know that you have been doing some of those wonderful things to help others. Now, if you have to choose, can you describe yourself in 3 words?
I would say I'm passionate about what matters to me, right? So I'm not passionate about everything, but what matters to me, I'm passionate about it. So if I'm involved in a project, I am all in 1000%. I'm a little quirky, I have a weird sense of humor, and then I'm pretty creative. I recently ran across, your phone gives you the look back, what happened 2 years ago, and these pictures pop up. So like this morning, literally 9 years ago, I was making jewelry, and I have like pictures of all the jewelry that I made, and I used to make candles as well. Right now I'm in my learning how to play the piano zone. So, that's a creative outlet for me. I'm probably going to get back into jewelry making again, just for fun. It's just a thing. So passionate, creative, and quirky. Those are my 3 words. But overall, though, I believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And so when people meet me, it's often, "Oh, she's so quiet," or she's, and it's not until you actually get to know me, or we're having some type of like debate about something, and you realize like she really cares about this, and she wants to be heard. And yeah, that's my personality. My personality is to stay to myself. I can hide in my apartment for days and no one sees me. And yet when it matters, I'm there.
So while you were talking about yourself having growth mindset, I pride myself to do the same. I love reading podcasts. And actually, I was telling one of my team members that I'm a closet introvert. And people said that
introvert. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a closet introvert, because like most of my friends who know me for years, they were like, "You're not an introvert." I said, "I am," because introverts is basically where your energy, comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not about how much I talk, how I appear in a group. It's like how much energy is draining me after attending a conference. I have to go into my room and just be by myself, recharge. So I call myself a closet introvert. There are 2 authors that I wonder if you have come across them. The first one is Carol Dweck, who wrote The Growth Mindset. Amazing author. Another person is Vanessa Van Edwards. And she wrote a book on cues. She's a behavioral scientist, but she basically distinguishes like there's introvert, there's extrovert, but there's ambivert. Those are the people like that are in between. It's basically when you go to conference, you could kind of like socialize, but who knows what you're going to go back when you have to recharge yourself. Right. So I'm like either a closet introvert or an ambivert. But when I told my friend that I'm an introvert, everybody we went on a girls' trip, and all of them jumped up and said, "You are not an introvert." I said, "I know who I am."
With the people that you're comfortable with, it's hard for them to know unless they've known you for a very long time. So most of my friends I've had since high school. I actually have one friend I've known since the 6th grade. They know that I'm an introvert. They know to like when to leave me alone. They know when I go quiet. They understand that. They know not to invite me to certain things. They know, but they also know that I'm a good time. We're a good time together, but they have, it took time for them to get to know that. I've had friends say to me, "I don't know how we became friends, because when I met you, you did not look like someone that wanted to be friends with anyone, because I was very stoic."
That's exactly the word I was thinking about when you were saying that. I was like, "Oh, stoicism."
She recently told me that. And I said, "Well, you have to get to know me." And I let you get to know me. I got to know you. And here we are 20 something years later, and we're still friends. It's interesting how we evolve and understanding ourselves and each other.
So VPG, we are actually growing an on-demand platform for like training.
Mm-hmm.
So I met someone on LinkedIn, Paralegal Supervisor at ACLU, North Cal chapter. And we were talking and basically going over like some specifics in terms of how's the program going, what do we do? So I do a little bit of discussion and coaching. And we were like joking yesterday about like leadership, management, and then all of a sudden we just broke into Taylor Swift's song, Anti-Hero. And then we just laughed so much. And I really, really enjoy being able to be like myself. And I was like, it's me, the problem is me, always me. But it was so good, like to be able to build a community and work with other women because we feel comfortable. She was like, do I look okay with this? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Do you think I need to do this? I'm like, no, just be you. So I was going to ask the question, how did you choose your path to become a manager at a large law firm? And do you think you picked the right path? And when you first started, you said that you started out as a receptionist. And when you share your cultural background of being from Haiti, and then the first born in America, I mean, I guess the struggle is real.
Everybody has a story, everybody has a struggle. And it's so important to keep that as part of your perspective and everything that you do as you go through life, because everybody does have a struggle, right? So there's that meme that goes around Instagram, be kind, you don't know what battles that someone is fighting. And I really try to understand that. I really am an empathetic person as well. I try to understand everyone's battles, and some days I don't engage and I'm just like, okay, whatever you're going through has nothing to do with me. But at the same time, I also try to help whenever possible, especially if it's someone that I know or someone that I'm close to. And it's a matter of how we look at that struggle, what we learn from the struggle. My grandmother came here. She didn't know a lick of English. And I'm from New York City, before Google Maps. You could ask my grandmother any destination and she could tell you what trains, what buses, where to connect, everything, right? As a Haitian immigrant, that is big because she comes from, Haiti. They have city life, but there's no metro, there's no transit. There's, you get in a car, you go where you gotta go. You walk to your neighbor's house, right? That's what's formed me. That's what's created me. That's, that's the stock that I come from. I come from people who, while they were struggling, they never stopped. And my grandmother was somebody who always helped. Always. My parents are the same way. My mom and my dad are the same way. My family is the same way. They just love to help people. My grandmother, and she didn't have much. It's not like she was rich, but she never came to your house empty-handed. Whether it was a carton of juice or a can of tuna fish, whatever she knew you liked. I loved Kit Kats when I was younger, and she would never show up in my house without a Kit Kat and $5. So that's the stock I come from.
I mean, I'm so glad because especially when you're talking about like your grandmother knowing exactly what train and, to take, when even with Google Map, I'm not sure I can navigate that, right? I mean, I could do it, take time, but because I am originally from Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So my parents came because my grandparents were here. So they applied for us and sponsored for us to come over. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother was illiterate, and she actually had she was so traditional that she had her feet bound. Oh, wow. So it was those era. Mm-hmm. And one thing that always surprised me is that you cannot cheat her at the grocery store. I'm like, Mom, how did Grandma know how to do this? She was like, just do. I don't know. But it's like they have a special, I guess, a keen sense of how things are. Mm-hmm. And, it's like when you go to a grocery, she look at the stuff. She doesn't read. Give out like $20. And it was like 1980. I was like, How did you do that?
She figures it out. They figure it out. Up until I was in my late 20s, she later on developed Alzheimer's and passed away from that. But up until my late 20s, this woman, I would call her and say, hey, how do I get to XYZ? And she would be like, oh, you take the A train to this stop, and then you got to take the bus to this stop, and then you got to take the... And I'm like, how do you know this, lady? Like, and she barely spoke English, but she figured out how to get to her destination because she didn't drive, but she figured it out, you know? And so when I look at her, how could I not be successful, one, accomplish, two, and help others? You look at just that one person, how could you not want to pass on some of that legacy and build upon that? She came here with nothing. And yet, how could I not take that and run with it? She walked so I can run. You know, now I run so my son could fly, right? Like, it's building on that legacy. And it doesn't have to be like we're millionaires. We're not millionaires. We're not, you know, but we're doing something for the world. We're adding to the world. So, and that's important to me.
That is very important to me. And that's one of the things when I first started my business. I think that it was more for myself. And I really wanted to have like a work-life balance because I was in litigation for 20 plus years. Right. Litigation is not conducive to work-life balance, at least in my opinion. I mean, other people may have been able to achieve that. And then my dad passed in 2017, rather suddenly. So it really changed my perspective on life. Mm-hmm. And I also have my mom living with me. And that does also change perspective because now I have to balance because my mom doesn't drive. But I think that when I realized that it was really difficult for me to juggle between pleasing others versus doing things that is meaningful to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really learned a lot from my previous job. And I really do believe that everything happens for a reason. You gain experience. I'm very grateful for the experience that I have gained and the people that have kind of gotten to know along the way. Many remain friends. But this is the next part of my journey. And I have no idea exactly where this is going to take me either. Right. So until then, I'm just going to enjoy the ride.
Amen. So
how did the pandemic change your role and responsibility as a practice manager? And how does this affect your worldview, if any?
So essentially, my role didn't change. There were some components that kind of shifted. We were always, at Perkins, we always had a program where paralegals worked remotely 2 days a week or 3 days a week. And so the shift to remote work was pretty smooth, right? Compared to what other firms and corporations were going through during that time. However, what we did figure out was that we could expand our candidate pool when we were recruiting, because now that we were remote, and it looks like we're going to be remote forever with some type of engagement in office, but for the most part, we're going to probably remain remote. We could expand our candidate pool and recruit in markets that we never recruited from before. But that also comes with its own difficulties, because when we do start to do in-office events, how do you bring the person that's in Montana into that fold when they're the only person in Montana? You know, that creates some challenges, and we've kind of tried to do a lot of restructuring of how we engage with our people. In general, we would do like a big meeting, you know, monthly with our paralegals and paralegal assistants and LPAs. Now we do one big meeting per quarter and then smaller regional meetings so that there's more small group interaction. People are getting to know each other a little bit better. We've done some focus groups, so that allows for some conversation and discussion amongst the paralegals and in smaller groups. We're using more of the firm's recognition programs to let people know, like, we see you. Even though you're in Montana, we see you. We also created a newsletter that I run every month just to keep people abreast of what's happening with the group. we just had to adapt, right? So my role continued adapting and evolving into more focus on engagement, because engagement was kind of easier when you're in the office. Even if we're in the office 3 days a week, we can engage, right? Now it's like we're all online, and some people don't, when they answer their phone, they don't turn on the video. And so you're staring at a black screen. So you had to adapt to that. And it's fine. I had to get comfortable with that because we're not face to face. It really was about adapting. It really wasn't about anything other than really adapting and recognizing that this was an opportunity to get creative about how we look at work and how we look at our people and how we engage with our people. And it's been good. I enjoy it. Again, I'm mostly remote. I just requested an office in our DC office. For the past year, I didn't have an office, which is interesting because I moved to the Bay Area to take my current position. And then during the pandemic, I moved back to the East Coast because I was so far away from my family and friends. So moved back to the East Coast, and now I'm in their DC office. But when I first started in the DC office, I didn't request an office. And then I realized, no, I need to adapt to that. I need to adapt and request an office and have a presence in the office once in a while to engage with my people as well.
Well, talking to you, I really enjoy our conversation so far because we seem to have like kindred spirit. We have a lot of similarities here. And one of the things that I can tell, especially when in terms of the adaptability, and I was like, oh, she can do it because she's very creative, from you dabbling about like jewelry making, doing your nonprofit, doing so many things other than the job that you're doing. It's not that we are not our position. People first, right?
Exactly.
So I think one of the things during the pandemic is really opening our eyes, because I work with, at the beginning when I first started, I was so stuck on this IRS because like all of us are 1099, right? So it's like, I don't have any employee because that would defeat the whole IRS definition of, employee. And I came from the legal background. So it's like, it's very strict, black and white. You have to adhere to that. So the first year, the struggle was also real. I was talking to people and I got onto a webinar. I'm like, I'm a bunch of freelancers. I'm not quite sure what to do about this. And I met a branding professor. He was really amazing. His name is Sasha Strout, and he was a TEDx speaker. I took his webinar because I had some free time. And then I started connecting with him and talked to him, invited him on a chat. And that was the last virtual water cooler chat before it turned into a podcast. He called it a podcast, but I was very self-conscious most of the time. But you couldn't tell, just like you cannot tell that I am an introvert. So I just decided to give myself a challenge and interview him on LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live.
Wow.
I was petrified before I got on. But I had Caitlin, who actually runs the show. And I was looking at one of the video that was not released. It was basically our prep. And we had Sasha on there. And I can tell my own leadership style differences because I used to be a manager. So manager and leaders, they have inherent differences because some people said that, well, as a manager, you manage your people. Well, there would be thought leaders that you don't manage people. They're not like a towel that you could just ring.
It's not a machine. It's not a machine.
Exactly. So with that, it was like when I was on the initial webinar and I didn't have enough self-confidence. It came across when I was taking the webinar, and after the webinar, I was like, oh yeah, I have this company and a bunch of freelancers. He was like, that's why he was so good. He was like, I know that you go places because you are basically flying this Millennium Falcon.
Okay.
So I am struggling from IRS definition. Freelancers, how do you actually creatively? So a lot of it is just even in our daily job, it's the box that you create for yourself within like constraint, because, at a larger organization, you have a lot more rules and policies. But for me, I have to be able to walk out of that box before I can actually invite other people in. So the first year was, I don't have any employees. Second year is like, maybe I do, but how do I actually engage? Because these are freelancers, very talented people, but even if I pay them a lot of money, they still don't belong to my company.
Right.
How do you actually get that engagement? And I found that very, very challenging. And I like challenges. So I was like, how do I actually do that? So I've learned so much from my team. And one of the things that is like really trying to figuring out exactly how best to engage them so that they feel the ownership, but at the same time still allow them to contribute to BPG and the workplace while growing them. So I think that in that sense, our philosophy are very similar. Every week, I would have like a weekly meeting, especially with a couple of people when we are working on challenges. And so from responsiveness to boundaries and a lot of it, I have to learn it myself because I was a yes person before. Like everything was a yes. Because you deal with a deadline, if you have that midnight deadline, what are you going to say to your attorneys? No. Well, I guess I would lose the job real fast.
Right.
Right. So years of experience of saying yes, but now it's like learning to say no.
Yeah.
And how do you say no diplomatically and while asserting your own value and knowing and appreciate your own value and your team's value? And that has been one of the things that I found so amazingly challenging, but it's also fun. When you crack that code, I was like,
when you crack the code, yes.
And I do agree with you on the adaptability. So, for example, I generally have a lot of perfectionists. So I would have to be very anxious about certain things. But I watched one of the prep video when we were doing that live. I was obviously with all this anxiety. And then, but inside at that moment was I think our webinar sort of coordinator was saying that, somehow we got, this is before we go live, it was like, somehow we got dropped off. And I was sitting there, I was like, don't worry, you got it. I know you got it, or something like that. That is so not like me. Mass, I was like, who is that?
And what happens is when you start to crack the code, as you say, what you're actually doing is you're just empowering all of the people around you to be their best selves, right? You're helping them, you're driving that vehicle to help them figure it out on their own, because essentially they have to figure it out on their own. You can't figure it out for them, right? You can point things out, you can give them best practices, but at the end of the day, you're just going to empower them. That's 2023, my word is empower. I am empowering my team to be their best selves, to give the best work product, to figure out what's best for them. I want to go back to that I can't say no thing. I mean, with litigation, it's very different. But what I've told my team of people is you don't have to say no. You can say not now. You can say, here's an alternative. This is not within my purview, but I will find someone to manage this for you. The word no always scares paralegals because, yes, they feel a sense of ownership to everything. Most paralegals are perfectionists. They're type A personalities. They take ownership of everything. I am a recovering paralegal myself, so I totally get it. But I have learned to say not now, or here's an alternative. And again, that's just me being creative, trying to figure out ways to empower people to be their best selves. And I just love to see, like you said, the cracking the code. Now that's going to be my new phrase for the year, cracking the code. Awesome. We're going to crack the code on this. Yeah, I think it's our job as leaders. I always kind of refer to the managers and supervisors that I work with, my colleagues, as leadership. I very rarely call myself a manager or a supervisor. That's my title, obviously, but generally I will say leadership. My team calls me their fearless leader because I tend to take on whatever it is, and it seems like I'm fearless, Usually I'm not. I'm shaking in my boots, but outwardly, I got this. But I think it's important. It's important to empower people to crack their own codes. We have the capability to do that because once they do it themselves, there's more value in it than me telling them, this is how you should do it. Because they're always going to look at me like, why do you think you know better than me, right? I might know better than you. It might work for me. Whatever way I tell you might work for me. It might not work for you. And so let's figure out together what the best next step is, how to improve this situation, whatever the situation is. Yeah. So that cracking the code, I'm going to write that down.
You're cracking the code to empower other people.
I am telling you, that's, I've never found a way to put it so perfectly, but that's exactly what my passion is to crack the code to empower other people. Because I feel like once you do that, sky's the limit. Along the way in my career, I have had people empower me and give me opportunities and help me see the best in me and even the worst in me that I could improve on, right? If it wasn't for that, if they didn't empower me to do that, I didn't see it as empowerment at the time. I just thought, oh, thank you, Jesus, somebody's helping me out, right? But what they actually did was empower me with their words, with their actions, with connecting me with someone, with writing a letter of recommendation, whatever it was, with mentoring, with training, with giving me an opportunity. My first opportunity at supervising was created for me because we didn't have that position before at the firm that I was at. That was a position that was created for me to do the things that we knew needed to be done. I did pretty well at it too, for someone who was, who had no experience in this whole game. And so today I stand on, that's where my foundation started in managing people. It started there where it wasn't even a position I never applied for the position. It was just a promotion, basically. They created this title and here I was managing people. I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured it out. I got mentorship. I got advice. I Googled things, and Google was not big at that time. I read books and I got advice from other managers. And so here I am, 20 some odd years later, cracking the code.
I think one thing that is so obviously when I came out and I always knew how to do not always, but I knew how to do filings. I do PTAP support. The thing is, I think most skills are transferable. And what is really important is learn to think. If you're a good thinker and you're a quick learner, pretty much sky's the limit. But the problem is, in many ways, people didn't, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have the podcast, is basically have other people that, people may say, oh, she's the founder. She must know what she's doing. Well, I know how to do filing. But when they changed the system, I had to figure out, I have anxiety. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then I read the user guide and all these things and trying to troubleshoot. And I really do pride myself on thinking out of the box. I was not as confident as before. I mean, I knew that I'm smart, but there's so many things that I didn't do it before. So how do I know that I can actually do it? So the reason for having this podcast is sharing important lessons and the journey from other women. So far, I've actually want to focus on women empowerment. I learned so much about leadership and management as well. Management, I really do believe that you manage resources, you lead people. And as I learn different lessons, I feel that it is good to share with others. And so I think this opportunity to share is pretty amazing. So I could talk to you all day, Brendy, but I have to go pick up my mom later.
I hear that.
What are some key lessons learned that you would like to share with our audience to sum it up?
My number one key lesson or key value, I would say, is staying connected to something higher than myself, Some people call it God, some people call it Buddha, some people call it whatever. I personally believe in God. I believe in the universe, a higher power, something that's connected to me, and I meditate. But I believe that there is something greater than me out there that has created. You can't look at the sky and not think that something bigger is out there, right? So I stay connected to that. And that helps me through moments of lack of self-confidence, challenges, doubt. That really is my foundation. And again, that's from my family. My grandmother was highly spiritual, highly religious. Professionally, I will say that, like you said, managing resources and leading people, empowering people to truly rethink how they manage themselves, how they continue to learn, how they work on efficiency, like giving them that platform and that understanding that you're in control of this. How can I help you be successful? How can I help you learn more? How can I help you be more efficient? How can I help you with whatever performance issues? But also on the other end, and my mentor at Perkins told me this, don't forget your high performers, right? Because they sit in the corner, they do their thing, they're hitting those billable hours, they're filing, they're perfect, everybody loves them, but we don't recognize them. Like they're just kind of there. We know they're there, but we forget that they're there because they're not causing any major issues, right? And especially the quiet ones who are just there to just kind of do their job, recognize them, call them up once in a while. I speak to my people once a month. We have one-on-ones once a month. So I definitely have those interactions, but I know that there can be high performers out there that are like, no one pays attention to me, but I'm just keep doing my job. And then they disappear. And then you wonder why they leave after a couple of years, right? Because there's no engagement there. So don't forget your high performers. While, you're empowering your people, it's usually the people that need you to empower them that you're interacting with, but don't forget to touch base with those high performers. And finally, I think as people leaders, we're helping build careers, which is something I didn't really recognize up until the past 2 or 3 years, where I realized like it's literally my job to help people go to where they want to go, right? So that success alone, right? The next move in the career, or even just staying in that same role, but learning something new in that role, being a participant in that, seeing that success, that's my success too. And that drives me. That drives me to do better for as many people as I possibly can. And then finally, you can't make everybody happy. Period. End of story.
I could not agree with you more. I was a construction litigation paralegal, and then I went to a patent firm. Not the previous firm that I was at, but to another firm. And I was a workaholic because my parents raised me to be a workaholic. You kind of just work, right? And I really did work very hard, and my attorneys love me. And then exactly like what you said, because I was just doing the work, minding my own business, while everybody, the troublemakers or the people that needed more attention, get all the attention. So I'm like, what am I, child labor? Then of course I got a headhunter call, and they was like, hey, would you like to go? I'm like, well, I got about 45 minutes. Maybe I'll go for an interview. Right. So that's how I got to the job that I was in for 19 years.
Right.
When I left, the administrator asked me, I didn't know that you were unhappy. I said that, well, you never bothered to check in on me. So one of the executive coach I met during the pandemic, his name is Mark Green, and he had a book called Activator. And he said that a lot of the issues in terms of management and leadership are that we pay too much attention to the problem performers versus the peak performers. You just really need to address that. I really like what you said about helping other people build their career. And sometimes it might mean that they have finished that part of the journey,
Yes.
And then you can't really hold grudges, because it's like everybody has their thing. And I do believe that people's path will cross because that's how things work. And so in that sense, I think that I don't ever burn bridges because
You never
the
know.
professional the world is small. You just never know. So in that respect, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I thoroughly enjoy our conversation
Thank
from
you,
two
me too.
introverts.